When it comes to the hyper-competitive world of home theater receivers, few boutique brands can compete with the likes of Denon or Marantz. And yet, Anthem, a Canadian brand owned by Paradigm Loudspeakers, has managed to thrive. So let's find out what makes Anthem and their newly updated MRX 740 8K receiver so intriguing. The MRX 740 8K is the mid-tier model in Anthem's MRX line of receivers. This 7.2 channel Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and IMAX enhanced surround sound receiver boasts 5 channels of Class AB power rated at 140 watts per channel, with 2 additional channels rated at 60 watts using a Class D amplifier. Should you need more than 7 channels, the 740 has full preamp outputs for 11.2 channels, allowing for future home theater expansion. You'll find 7 HDMI inputs and 3 HDMI outs, all of which are HDMI 2.1 compliant and that can pass through signals up to 8K 60 and 4K 120. It supports all of the major HDR formats as well, including Dolby Vision and HDR10+. Gamers will be happy to see support for both VRR and ALLM. Now, the ARC-EARC port enables uncompressed audio support for formats such as Dolby Atmos. Throw in a 32-bit DAC supporting signals up to 768, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Apple AirPlay 2, and Google Chromecast, and you have the bulk of the Anthem's features summed up. I think the 740, hell, the MRX line in general, rank among the best looking and best built receivers on the market. I love the simplicity of its design, relying very heavily on a large color screen that dominates the front panel, one that is bright enough and clear enough that it is legible from several feet. This is important because the 740 has virtually no on-screen display, at least not one that you're going to brag to your friends about. The MRX is clearly designed to be set up using the screen on the receiver and/or your laptop. Anthem advertises their control app as being compatible with this receiver. However, despite numerous attempts to get it to work, including multiple restarts and resets, was never able to get the two to communicate. So, your mileage may vary. When it comes to speaker matching, we tested the Anthem using the Martin Logan Motion F100s and its matching center, the Klipsch 8000F Mark IIs, and RP600C center. All of these were paired with our Klipsch in-ceiling speakers and B&W subwoofer to round out both a traditional 7.1 surround sound and a 5.1.2 Dolby Atmos system. We also took our Cornwalls and the Heresy 4s for a spin. Now, since receivers can have a higher noise floor when mated to more efficient speakers, the last two from Klipsch were a nice torture test. The Anthem was relatively silent as it pertained to tweet or hiss, though the same cannot be said for fan noise, which I'm going to talk about more in just a moment. If you are wondering if your speakers will be a good match, so long as their impedance is 4 ohms and higher, and they have a sensitivity that's greater than, say, 84 dB, you should be just fine. With the 4-ohm Martin Logan speakers connected, I fired up Anthem's own auto room correction software, ARC Genesis. Unlike built-in room correction software like Odyssey or DIRAC, Genesis requires the use of not only the included calibration microphone, but also a laptop, which is obviously not included. Thankfully, the software is both PC and Mac compatible. It connects with the receiver over Wi-Fi to let you carry out the mostly automatic room correction procedure. It has been a minute since I last played with ARC, and I have to say, I really like how far it's come. When it comes to room correction procedures, Anthem seems to mimic the type of correction or curve I would follow if doing things manually, resulting in a sound that still feels true to the connected speakers, only elevated and is free from as many room interactions as possible. While it may not possess the same virtualization or speaker relocation and spatial mapping tech as Sony's latest ES receivers, in terms of sonic results before and after, it is one of my favorites. If you have a surround sound setup with speakers ideally located according to Dolby standards, the Anthem will not disappoint. But if your setup takes some liberties with placement, I still think Sony's latest ES receivers may be the better choice, especially when it comes to spatial mapping. With all of our speakers dialed in and the Anthem connected to our 98-inch TCL TV, Apple TV 4K, Dune player, and PS5, I sat back to enjoy the show. The Anthem has a sense of confidence that is extremely impressive. It never once flinched when mated to the 4-ohm Martin Logans. Even with peaks approaching 100 decibels, the Anthem epitomized composure, controlling the 3 woofers of the F100 brilliantly. Bass-heavy musical sequences from the film Burlesque were especially impressive, retaining all of the texture and nuance that I know is in the mix. Even chaotic action sequences like those in the film Midway proved no problem for the Anthem. Now, the receiver's overall tone is near as makes no difference neutral, and this is observable in the correction curves ARC uses when EQing speakers. There is a subtle rise in the low, mid bass, and bass that's a little bit more in opposition to the more aggressive curve I've seen from the likes of Odyssey. As a result, actors in mid-range leaning sound effects seem natural and sound as they should. Using my own voice as a test, the MRX did not alter the timbre of my vocals, nor did it sacrifice any of its weight or dimension. Intelligibility, therefore, is very high with this receiver. As for the treble, Anthem's house curve tries for a subtle roll-off as you cross 10 kHz, which keeps detail intact but curbs the possibility for strain or worse, listener fatigue, which is a trait I think a lot of customers are ultimately going to appreciate. For me, it made the Anthem infinitely listenable and enjoyable at all volumes, especially high ones. When tasked with playing back mixes that struggle with clipping or plosives, the Anthem strikes a great balance of keeping the treble lively and detailed, but never too aggressive. Of course, if you're one who believes an amp or receiver should never alter or adjust the performance of the signal, you can always defeat the MRX's room correction for the purest possible experience. When it comes to surround sound, the Sony 7000 ES does a better job of placing sounds in a more seamless 360-degree bubble in our space compared to the Anthem, which makes locating video game baddies just a little bit easier. But the MRX 740 isn't completely outclassed. It's definitely a very close second. However, I prefer the tonality and greater sense of weight coming from our Klipsch in-ceilings through the Anthem, something I noted when playing video games like The Last of Us remake on our PS5. Spatially, I preferred the Sony. However, when Ellie's dialogue occurred behind or to the side of me during walking sequences, the Anthem felt a little more grounded, more present. Dynamically, the Sony is more lively, a bit more nimble, but the Anthem again was more weighty and nuanced down low when paired with the exact same speakers. And as for two-channel listening, I really like the Anthem. In stereo, the MRX comes very close to matching the performance of one of my current favorite integrateds, the Audiolab 9000A, which on its own retails for about the same cost as the 740. Now, those of you who still think you can enjoy two-channel music at a high level through an AVR, the Anthem may be the receiver to get you to change your tune. Now, the Sony 7000 ES's soundstage does a marginally better job recreating or conveying a greater sense of space from two speakers when using its 360-degree audio enhancements. But apart from that, the richness of the Anthem is incredibly hard to beat. Now, those of you who I know will ask about a phono input for vinyl playback, sorry. The Anthem, much like the Sony, is missing a phono preamp. You can always connect via Bluetooth if your turntable has that sort of thing, and listen to records in the future. But, you sticklers and purists, you're going to need a third-party option. Now, the Anthem comes up short for me in three key areas. Despite having HDMI 2.1 support with gaming features that I have come to rely on, switching between HDMI inputs as well as the receiver itself, reacting to CEC commands is slow, like measurable on a sundial level slow. When connected to our TCL TV, the Anthem sometimes failed to power on or off via control over HDMI commands, something no other receiver we have in-house has done. Now, this isn't a deal breaker, but at its premium price, this is not something one expects to have to deal with. Next, the on-screen display is atrocious. As well designed as the receiver is, the OSD is beyond poor. Now, Marantz and Denon are definitely leading the pack with respect to OSDs in 2023, with Anthem ranking among the worst I think I've ever seen. Lastly, and this was a surprise, but the Anthem uses fans to help keep its relatively compact chassis cool, and those fans are audible. During quiet passages or when switching between inputs, you will hear them, especially if your receiver is placed out in the open. And once you hear them, it's very hard to tune them out. While it's not uncommon for receivers to have a higher noise floor compared to purpose-built amplifiers, few have fan noise like the MRX 740. If I were living with the MRX long-term, I would definitely find a way to stash it away in a cabinet or closet, because once my brain locked onto those fans, it was so hard for me to unhear them. The MRX 740 goes toe-to-toe with the Marantz Cinema 50, Sony's new 7000 ES, and Pioneer's soon-to-be-released Elite 805. All three receivers retail for around $3,000, though the Anthem offers up the fewest number of internal channels for your money. In terms of sheer value, believe it or not, the 7000 ES from Sony ranks very high. It actually has the most channels of amplification at 13, plus it has full preamp outs for future expansion. Personally, I only really need 7 or 9 channels of amplification, but the Sony supports up to 3 pairs of overhead speakers without having to use a third-party amp, whereas the Anthem only supports 2. ARC is one of my favorite room correction solutions, but I still really love the spatial audio gains I get from Sony. If I could merge some of Sony's software into Anthem's hardware and chassis, I think I may have just found the perfect AV receiver. The Marantz Cinema 50 is still a force to be reckoned with, and from the factory, it is cheaper, not to mention more versatile. All that said, if you want to unlock the 50's full potential with DIRAC, it's going to cost you. And if you're at all a fan of running multiple subwoofers, it may cost you quite a bit. I don't know how much better or worse DIRAC will make the 50 compared to the Anthem, but the sound quality of these two are very evenly matched. My personal tastes side a little bit more with the MRX based on what I've heard so far from the Cinema 50, but keep in mind when we reviewed it, the update for DIRAC had not yet been released. As for the rest, we're just going to have to wait and see because Pioneer's new Elite 805 has only just been announced, and yes, we are getting one. Other similar products like Integra's new flagship, the 8.4, may be limited in their distribution since Integra's parent company doesn't seem to want to send out any for review, so we're going to have to see when and how we can get our hands on one. Now, Anthem versus the ONKYO RZ50. Haha, you thought I forgot. I still prefer the RZ50's day-to-day livability. Its DIRAC implementation is flawless and a bit easier to use, but sound-wise, prefer the Anthem. Now, is the Anthem 2 to 3 times better? No, but it's still better. I honestly hope, if nothing else, that AV receiver manufacturers are looking at what Anthem is doing with their MRX line and are paying very close attention. From an industrial design standpoint, no one can touch them. In terms of sonics, the MRX 740 is among my favorites, top 3 easy. If they can work out some of their HDMI quirks and maybe tune the fans or come to market with a better, quieter cooling system, I think the MRX 740 and its siblings would be very, very hard to beat at any price. All right, so that's now my review of Anthem's MRX 740 8K receiver, but before we go, come on, what'd you think?
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah?
Yeah. Are you surprised?
Well, you've actually been pretty tight-lipped about this one. It's not like you've shared a lot of comments the whole time we've had it, so I actually wasn't sure.
Huh. I have always thought it was a very respectable receiver. Mm-hmm. I think it really was recently when you queued up the Burlesque movie that made me really appreciate the receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, it is so well designed.
Yes.
It's pretty. It's very pretty to look at.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I wish more receivers looked as good as this one. Mm-hmm. I thought it sounded fantastic with the Martin Logans. Mm-hmm. You know, we're going back to the Burlesque movie, that dance sequence with Christina Aguilera, it was so good.
Yeah.
For a second there, it felt like the motion speakers were almost as good in the bass department as the DevTechs that we just reviewed.
Almost. I mean, we did have a subwoofer in connected, but yeah, we got real close.
It was so much fun.
Yeah.
The fan noise that you mentioned, I can't say that it bugged me as much, but that's really not a surprise. This is something that just typically Andrew is more susceptible to in terms of things that bug him. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time with stuff like that, distinguishing it from just like general room tone.
Okay.
Things, or speaker noise. It just fades in the background for me.
Okay.
It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
Really, for me, my biggest complaint with this product is how absolutely slow it is to react to changes. Yeah. I mean, it's really kind of hard to even grasp. Yeah. Like how in this day and age it lags so much. Yeah. And like you said, the on-screen menus they're about as laughable as Emotiva's MR1. Yeah. One of the brands I was a little bit surprised you did not mention was Yamaha, So I'm confident that there's going to be at least a handful of people that are going to want to know how it compares to Yamaha's receivers.
Yeah.
And I also would like to know how you feel YPAL compares to Anthem's EQ.
Okay. The reason I didn't bring up Yamaha is it's been over a year since we've had the A8A. And that really is the most comparable receiver to the 740, although the A8A, like the Sony, like the Marantz, does have more channels. So there's that. But I think pound for pound, price-wise, those two are going to be pretty evenly matched. If I'm going off the performance of the A4A and Yamaha's just thirst for neutrality, they're going to be pretty evenly matched, with the Anthem probably having just a little bit more kind of uptick, just a little bit more of a pulse versus just straight line neutrality like Yamaha. As for room correction, I'm going to side a little bit, if you're going off of auto room correction, I'm going to side a little bit with ARC Genesis. ARC stands for Anthem Room Correction, by the way. I just like it. It has that just little hit of mid-bass weight, which I tend to like. The reason I like Yamaha so much is they are one of the few, if not the only, mass market receiver brands out there that really let users attack room correction on their own using parametric EQ. Everyone else pretty much uses graphical EQ unless you use their automated software, which doesn't necessarily always let you tweak. So Yamaha kind of gives you a little bit of the best of both worlds for me. But if I'm going by user experience, out of the box, blah, 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 I think Anthem has the leg up on Yamaha for me, just going off of memory. Again, it has been more than a year since the A8A, and I would love to get that receiver back in-house so that I can have a little bit more apples to apples for you guys, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, speaking of room correction, if we're just talking about maybe audiophiles who are looking to transition to a receiver, how would you rank this receiver in terms of ease of use? Like, how's the learning curve for somebody that's maybe never had a home theater receiver before, or has very little experience?
Okay. This is not as easy as Sony. Sony is the fastest to get working, has the fastest room correction procedures that I've ever seen, and is generally pretty user-friendly. I would say the ONKYO RZ50 is probably in second place for me, but Marantz and Denon are pretty much neck and neck there, partially because their menus are they're just so easy to understand, and I love that. Anthem is not as difficult as Yamaha or as kind of manual as Yamaha, so I'm going to put Anthem in third place. So yeah, if I had to rank them, I'm going to put Sony in the lead. I'm going to put ONKYO, Denon, Marantz kind of in that second tier, and then I would put Anthem and then Yamaha. So, and then obviously there's more brands than that, but those are kind of I'm going to call them the big four, and that's kind of how I'd rank them.
Okay. Well, I do like that they include a microphone for the calibration.
Yeah, and a mic stand, which is kind of incredible. And it's a legit mic stand, similar to the ones that we use to record dialogue here. It's pretty good.
Because one of the things with, I think, Marantz and Denon that we learned recently, when you buy DIRAC,
yes,
as the add-on,
yes,
it doesn't come with a microphone.
Correct. The microphone that ships with the Marantz and Denon products that works with Odyssey will not work with DIRAC. And so you will have to, in addition to the DIRAC license, you will have to purchase one of the compatible microphones. So if you buy, I think, the DIRAC Live at like $350, $399, you have to budget probably for another $79 to $179 for a compatible microphone. If you get that base DIRAC kit thing that does up to 4 subwoofers, that's an extra $500 or $600 plus a microphone. So yeah, in terms of quality components that come with your purchase, no one touches Anthem. No one. I was very impressed by that. They don't give you a laptop, but they don't charge you for their software. And as I understand it, certain things are in beta right now, but as I understand it, a lot of this stuff will also be available to tweak and use on smart devices and tablets.
Okay,
which
cool.
is very cool.
Yeah, so those are just things that you want to maybe consider when you're factoring in your overall budget.
Yeah. I think long term, I would put the Anthem as kind of an investment grade AV receiver. Now, whether or not that's a smart play, given how fast technology changes, that's not for me to decide. But it definitely exudes a higher end feel. And at least the 740, yeah, I know it's like, $3,000 or so. I think it's currently on sale though. If depending on when you watch this, it might be on sale. But I think it's worth it. I do. I really, really appreciate some of the attention to detail. If it had a better OSD and a little bit faster HDMI switching, holy crap, this thing would be lights out, almost untouchable, in my opinion, if you can get away with 7 channels.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, I think that we've covered everything.
That's it?
Yeah.
All right, guys. That is now our review of Anthem's MRX 740 8K receiver. What do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below. Question of the day for you. Now that Anthem has come to the channel, of all the AV receivers that we've reviewed to date, which one has been your favorite? Sound off. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Go ahead and ring the bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links that Kristi's left for you down below, know that that is a great way that you have continued to show your support for this channel and the work that we do here. And both of us thank you all very much for doing that. Follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile, and that's it for us today. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next one. Bye.